Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to part 2 of our virtual autumn event series here at CMS. My name is Kat Crisp, and I am our Early Talent Acquisition Manager. I'm delighted to be introducing today's session, which we've entitled Building Your Own Personal Brand. So very much welcome to you, and I hope you're all doing well today. So today's session, we really wanted to give you the knowledge and skills to build your personal online presence. Social media is quite literally all around us, everywhere you look, and the pandemic has very much catapulted us into the virtual world which we now live in. So we appreciate that it can be really, really challenging to know where to start in terms of building your online presence and also your personal brand in the right way. So today's session, we want to support you to do that, and we're going to provide some helpful hints and tips to make you stand out from the crowd online as well. In addition to our two speakers, which I'll come on to introduce you to shortly, I have here in the background my wonderful colleague, Anita Walker. She is also works in the Early Talent Acquisition team, and she's going to be manning our chat function. So if you have got any questions throughout today's session, whether it's to do with the content or whether it's to do with general kind of application advice, then please do feel free to pop your questions into the chat function, and she will be on hand to answer those for you. So before I introduce our two main speakers, I want to start by asking you a quick question on our poll. So this is really to help us get a bit of a sort of a sense check as to where you're at currently. So if we can launch today's poll, and as you can see from that, the question is, how confident do you feel about developing your own personal brand? So are you someone that is very confident? Are you quite confident, a bit confident, or not confident at all? As I say, the reason why we ask this is it provides us with a bit of a sense check and some useful context for our speakers. And a bit of spoiler alert here, we will be asking you a similar question at the end of today's session. And that's because we want to see whether what we've delivered to you in terms of content has really hit the spot. And we hope and anticipate that you will have genuinely upskilled yourself a little bit by attending today's session. So while we're waiting for those results to come in, I'm really pleased to be introducing our two speakers. Both are experts in brand and work for CMS. Firstly, we're joined by Bram, who is the head of brand and digital for CMS UK. Give us a little wave, thank you so much. And he's going to be talking to us a little bit about the psychology behind building our personal brand and why it is so important. We're then going to be joined by Nick Hearn. Give us a wave, Nick. Thanks so much. Nick has a very complicated title. I'll try and get it all out in one go. Talent, brand and social media manager. There we go. I think I managed it. Who is going to be providing you with some really, really helpful hints, tips and advice to help you build an impactful LinkedIn profile and also how to network online in the right way. So that's going to be really, really interesting. So before I hand over to Bram, just want to share with you the poll results. So interestingly, 26% of you are feeling confident and 50% are actually feeling a bit confident. So it definitely feels like there's some room there for us to increase your knowledge and your expertise in this area before we close today's sessions. So thanks so much for popping your answers into that. That's really helpful and really useful. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Bram to introduce himself in a bit more detail and to cover off today's session. So thanks, Bram.
Thank you very much, Kat. Hello, everyone. So I'm Bram. I'm the head of brand and digital at CMS. And today I'll be talking a little bit about the different steps to put in place between having no personal brand and actually having a personal brand that you can use for something, because that's in the end the main goal is to actually use your personal brand for something. Building a personal brand should actually help you achieve whether that is landing a job or whether that is actually once you have a job actually landing more business. Your personal brand can really help you achieve that, but you need to keep in mind what your purpose is. So I'll be talking a little bit about through the different steps to kind of help you get a little bit of a clearer understanding of what it takes to stand out from the crowd, as Kat said earlier as well. So when we start with our steps, the first thing to acknowledge is that there's an awful lot of noise in the world, and especially online, in terms of when you're on social media and you want to build your personal brand on social media. For instance, LinkedIn is a great place to build your professional brand. There's an awful lot of other content that you're competing with, and an awful lot of other people that are trying to build their personal brand as well. And LinkedIn use, for instance, is growing by 20% nearly year on year, which means that that single feed that people see on their screen, that single feed full of posts, is actually the 10 first posts of that feed are actually going to be, there's more people that are actually vying for those 10 first slots, and those are kind of the most important slots. So what you want to do is actually really find a strategy that actually really helps you resonate with your audience and to cut through that noise. So the first step to take when you want to actually cut through the noise is, once you've decided what platform that you're going to be using, is actually building awareness. And awareness means that you actually that people are aware of the fact that you exist, and that's merely people have heard of your name, and they may have seen your profile photo. That's the basic requisite of building a personal brand. The second step is then making sure that people realize that you are relevant. And so, for instance, when you're looking for a role or looking to start your career, that means that you are actually want to have a career in law, for instance, and that you want to specialize in a particular, well, either in law or in a particular sector, and kind of making that as clear as possible, that relevance. When you actually have a job as a lawyer, that relevance is important in terms of getting clients to understand, or potential clients to understand, what it is that you can help them with. So if you're an intellectual property lawyer, you want to be talking about intellectual property law a lot, so that people realize that when they have an intellectual property issue, they can actually come to you. Once you've established that relevance, once people know that you exist and they know that you do relevant things, it's all about building trust. And whether it comes to actually building your career, or actually finding new clients and developing your professional relationships, trust is the backbone of all of that. It's all about relationship building, and people need to be able to trust you, both in terms of your skills as well as you as a person. Once you've established that trust, that's when the relationship building can start. And there's a big difference between trust and relationship, and the actual relationship. You can trust someone you see on TV, but that doesn't mean you actually have a relationship with someone that you've seen on TV. So the difference between going from people that trust you to actually having a relationship with these people is all about having one-to-one conversations and actually having one-to-one contact. So this is kind of the step, and I'll talk about that a little bit later as well, is where we go from the first three steps: building awareness, building relevance, and building trust. You can do most of that you can do online, and you can do that by talking to a very big audience, as it were. But that relationship bit is the bit that you'll have to do one-on-one, and that can happen online via direct messaging and so on as well. But very often that also happens over phone calls and meeting people at events and meeting people at conferences and so on. And then once you've got those four building blocks in place, it's all about timing, because as you will know, when it comes to applying for a training contract, for instance, or when it comes to actually landing a client, those opportunities aren't constant. A client isn't looking for a lawyer every single day of the year. They are looking for a lawyer when they have a particular issue, or when they're actually revisiting their current lawyer relationships. So what you want to be doing is you want to build that personal brand so that when the timing is right, you're actually top of the list in terms of people that may be considered. And those first 4 steps take quite a long time. It's a bit of an endurance race. It's not about doing 2 or 3 things and then letting it rest. It's something that you constantly have to nurture and build up. And that means that you probably, even if you don't want to, if you're not looking for looking to apply right now, for instance, for your next role, or you're not actually looking to expand your business relationships at this point, it's important to start investing in your personal brand right now, so that when the timing is right, you're actually ready to benefit from that. The first 3 steps, in very layman terms, means you want to be seen as an expert. The 3 steps at the top, going from trust to timing, is actually all about triggering conversation, and this is especially relevant when you actually work as a lawyer. And that you want to be triggering conversations with clients so that you can take on extra work. And the top 2 steps are all about staying front of mind. So that means not doing something great this week and then not doing anything anymore for the rest of the year, because people will just forget about you, and they will forget the things that you've done a year ago. So it's all about keeping that up on a regular basis. So let's have a quick look at each of these steps separately. So the awareness step, in terms of building awareness from noise, the first thing that you need to be aware of is that when you use channels like LinkedIn, for instance, to actually build your personal brand, and I would thoroughly recommend LinkedIn as your main professional channel to building your brand. Nick will be talking about that a little bit later as well, but it is the channel that most professionals use in a professional way, and it's also a channel that is very targeted, where you can connect to people that are actually within your a particular sector, or that do particular roles. When you use other platforms, it's very, very hard to know whether a particular user is actually what type of job they do and so on. So I definitely recommend focusing on LinkedIn. But it's important to realize the algorithm of LinkedIn and kind of how the algorithm works. And the algorithm is a set of code that kind of determines which posts appear on top of the feed and which posts people actually see in their feed. And there's a few things that you can do to actually improve your reach and make sure that more people see you. And that is, you use certain formats. So for instance, if you use a PDF documents with multiple pages where you can slide from one to the next, that is a more have I lost my slides? It seems like something has gone wrong there. Let me just reshare my slideshow. There we go. Seems to have come back now. There we go. Building that reach is making sure that you know which format to use. A PDF slider kind of format where you upload a PDF file with different pages on there is something that the algorithm loves. So that's one thing that you can do. If you just put a single photo on LinkedIn, the algorithm doesn't like that as much. So there's some things that you can do to actually boost your reach. Another thing is making sure that you get a lot of likes and comments. That will boost your reach as well. But do some research on the algorithm that you're using. Secondly, in terms of awareness, you want to make sure that people actually see your content, because people are just scrolling on through their feeds, and you want to grab their attention. And you only have 2 seconds per post to grab their attention, and people can only read 7 words in 2 seconds. So that means the first 7 words that you put on whatever content that you're putting on LinkedIn are actually the most important. And you want to say something that's unexpected and new on there, so that people actually want to stop. because if it's something that people already know, then people are not likely to actually stop and read the rest that you have to say. So focus on the first 7 words and try to make that into a headline or a big statement on your post, so that you can actually get people to stop scrolling. Also do a bit of research in terms of what other ways that you can actually grab people's attention. That could be with attention grabbing photos, for instance, or attention grabbing colors. The second step then is actually making sure that people know what you stand for and what your relevance is. And there's a great saying in psychology that says neurons that fire together wire together, and neurons that are the little nodes in your brain, and that kind of decide what you remember and what you don't remember. And if you actually see 2 concepts together, you start associating those 2 concepts together. So for instance, when it comes to our lawyers, if you have a lawyer that shares things on LinkedIn, and he always shares things about the latest in artificial intelligence, for instance, you'll start associating that person's name with artificial intelligence. And the next time you actually want to explore some of the legal issues around artificial intelligence, that connection works in the other way around as well. So when you think about artificial intelligence, you'll think about the lawyer. Similarly, for when you're trying to apply for for instance, a training contract, if you actually can make sure that your name stands for someone who's really keen and quite good at actually exploring all things related to the law, then people might remember your name when people are starting to look at your application and so on. They might remember your name of that in that way as well. So it's important to always talk about the same things. So building a personal brand is all about focusing on a few topics that you want to be known for, and that could be law, or that could be a specific area within law, or that could be a particular sector within law as well. And you can't our brains aren't wired to actually think about a certain person and think about them, think about 5 to 10 things that are actually related to that person. It's only 1 to maximum 3 things that people can remember about you. So it's very important to stay focused. A good example of that is this gentleman. If you look at him, you might think of an actor that has been on a lot of theater stages and has done a lot of different movies, or you might think of him as Harry Potter. And that is because our brain works that way. We can only think Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter, and that's kind of what you want to be. You want to actually be in control of what you're known for. You'll also recognize this person maybe as the presenter of Top Gear, or Joey from Friends, because again, you can probably only remember one thing about these actors. So once you've established that trust, once you've actually established that relevance, and people know what you kind of stand for, it's all about building trust. And how do you build trust? It's basically staying credible and plus time. So that means if you constantly provide content that actually is credible, then over time people will start trusting you. So it's important to keep that quality of content up, and to actually make sure that you actually check your sources when you're sharing something, that you actually have something valuable to contribute, because that credibility over time will actually lead to trust, but also the lack of credibility will very, very quickly diminish that trust. It's important to note that it's very important to stay authentic. People don't like to be sold to, and it is very very clear when someone's trying too hard to convince you either to hire them or to work with them in a different way. So it's important to stay true to yourself, keep it personal, and keep it authentic. Don't try to make it too salesy, whatever that it is that you want to put out there on social media, for instance. And that way, credibility will follow over time. Then There's a fun little psychological theory which is called the mere exposure theory, and that means the more you see something, the more you'll like it. And that's purely for the reason that your brain actually finds it easier to process things that are related to you when it sees you quite a lot. So that means as long as you don't do anything negative, as long as it's neutral or positive, people seeing you and your name and your photo on social media, for instance, on a regular basis, will just mean that over time they'll start liking you well. So there's a that's quite a fun little theory around mere exposure. Then once you've established trust, this is where the tricky bit comes, and it's often more relevant when you're actually trying to win work. But it's quite useful to keep in mind when you're also trying to find your next role. It's all about that triggering conversations. So as I said, the awareness, relevance, and trust building, you can do that without actually knowing the people that you're talking to. You can do that by just sharing things on LinkedIn on a very regular basis, but it's very hard to actually turn that into a relationship without knowing people one-to-one. So a lot of the things that we help our lawyers do is actually triggering those conversations and finding excuses to actually talk to people. And that could be attending events where people are present, and if they've seen you before on LinkedIn, they're more likely to have a chat with them. It could be sending interesting information to some of the contacts that you've seen. It could be if you already know the person a little bit, to drop them a quick email, or to give them a quick phone call. That bit with the relationship building, is very important that you don't rush that, because you can be seen as very inauthentic very quickly. And it's all about giving. Building a relationship is always about providing value to the other party rather than asking. So if you're getting in touch with people to ask for favors and ask them to do certain things, then your relationship will wither very quickly. But if you're always providing value, then you're constantly building that trust and credibility, and growing that relationship over time. And then as I said, yeah, it's best to leave LinkedIn, for instance, behind. And then because the noise will always be there and will always overtake you, it's important to do these things on a continual basis. It's better to actually do something, for instance, on LinkedIn, 5 to 10 minutes every week, and do it every single week, rather than spend half a day creating something brilliant one week and then being quiet for 3 to 6 months. It's about being that staying continually front of mind. And if you think about all the different steps in terms of that awareness building, the fact that you have to make those connections in people's brains between you and a certain topic or a certain theme, and then building that trust, it's quite logical that doesn't work as a one-off, and that requires kind of a constant going. That was a kind of the in short the different steps of how to actually build your personal brand. So for when the timing is right, you're actually in a much better position to actually achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve in a professional manner. I'll be handing over to Nick now. We'll be talking a little bit more about specifics.
Thank you, Bram. So I'm Nick. I'm the talent brand manager here at CMS. And as Bram mentioned, I'm going to take you through some of the more practical elements and focusing on LinkedIn. As Bram said, this is more of a professional social platform, which certainly across the legal market, across the working world is being used, and being used even more, 20% year on year, from what Bram said. So I'm going to focus on two sections here. So firstly, building your profile, and then secondly, using your profile. And in between, I'm going to show you a couple of examples to bring to life some of the building your profile elements to give you an idea of what a version of a good profile or good section looks like. So a lot of you may already have a LinkedIn profile. If you don't, I would certainly recommend creating one and starting to build it along the lines of what Bram was just running through. If you don't know how to, very simple, hop onto LinkedIn and linkedin.com, and then there'll be a sign up and it'll take you through how to start and kind of create an initial profile. Couple of key things on your profile. Firstly, starting with a profile picture. Really important to have a picture. In terms of having a picture, I think you're 21 times more likely to have a profile view if you have a photo versus not. And make sure that photo is professional. You don't have to necessarily be in a suit and tie or or some other professional dress, but something that probably mirrors what you're comfortable kind of meeting a client in or working in the office in is helpful. So having that professional profile picture. Then having a background banner image is also very useful. It helps your profile stand out. If you scrolling through different people's profiles and you see just a generic kind of LinkedIn image at the background, it's not going to catch your eye, but a background banner image of something interesting will do. At CMS, we have background images similar to the purple background behind me here, or some like you can see on the screen here. One of our partners, Chris, has a background relevant to his industry sector, which is construction and infrastructure. So having that background banner, whatever it may be, have it relevant and eye-catching. Outside of that, then you've got your headline. So the headline is essentially your job title, but what we're saying here is it's more than your job title. So that's the sentence underneath Chris's name there. You can see helping put together deals for construction, energy and infrastructure projects. Now LinkedIn will automatically fill that as whatever your current job is. So that would be partner, maybe partner CMS. But as you can see here, having something that explains other people on LinkedIn, users, what you do is much more informative and again, eye-catching for someone that may be looking for an expert in this area, as an example. So having something that describes a little bit of what you do or what you're about there is much more engaging than just simply a job title. Then below the headline, we've got the summary section, the about section on your profile. So this can kind of take a number of forms. It can be some bullet points. It can be 2 to sort of 5 or 6 paragraphs here as we see, or it can be a little bit shorter. Now, Chris, for example, is an experienced partner. He's got quite a lot to say. Other people might have different things to say that may not be purely experience based. If you're more junior in your career, it might be more around your skill set or more of a personal take on that profile. But some of the key things, don't make it too long. Make sure you're saying something interesting. Write it in the first person. So you can see here we've got I am, I have, my clients, I write, because this is essentially your summary statement on yourself, and try and share a little bit of kind of what you're interested in and let your personality come through it as well. Will help humanize your profile on LinkedIn. So here in the example, you can see that Chris starts with a quick intro on who he is and what he does, talks about some of the interesting work and his areas of expertise, briefly covers some kind of client highlights, talks about some of his extracurricular activities, as it were, where he's contributed to things outside of his core role at CMS. And then at the bottom, you can see he covers off essentially kind of keyword grabbing in that summary section. So talking about his specialties, and that's linking to the keywords that are associated with his industry and his expertise. So you can see project structuring, contract negotiation, procurement, as a few. In that section as well, it's also important to avoid some of the classic buzzwords that you see everyone using. Some of those that LinkedIn have identified recently are things like specialized, passionate, strategic, expert, innovative. There's nothing wrong with those words, but make sure you're using those words around having actually something to say, rather than just using them, those words to describe, I am strategic. You want to, nothing wrong with using the word strategic, as long as it's coming in the context of actually giving an example, because saying I am strategic with nothing behind it means nothing to anyone. So now you've got a profile, you've got a profile picture, you've got your background banner, you've got a headline that's more than just your job title, and you've got an interesting summary. What do you do now? The next step, connect with people. So connect with colleagues. It may be from work experience, it may be colleagues and friends at university, or other educational environments. It might be friends. It might be clients if you've got clients at this stage in any form. Think about your network. Basically, think about your network. Who do you know that you could immediately connect with? There's a balance here, as with everything, between quality and quantity. But what you really want is ideally quality and quantity. You want to try and get both, because the more people you're connected with, the more access that gives you to the LinkedIn platform, and then second degree connections with other people, which allows you to then interact with them, possibly connect with them, possibly send them a message. So focusing on quality to start with, on who do you actually know, connecting with them, and building it from there. So you connected with a few people. Now we're looking at the skills and endorsements section of your profile. So this is really good to populate this if you can. So here you have manual control over this. So list some of your key skills, as you can see here on this screen grab, again from Chris: contract negotiation, construction law, legal advice. So they're relevant to his role. For you, it might be relevant to things that you've done, or things that you're looking to develop experience in. You can then be endorsed for these skills. So again, that could be asking a friend or colleague in a similar position to you, can you endorse me for this skill? You can then scratch their back, as it were, and endorse them as well. So a little bit of give and take. Usually if you endorse someone, they will often endorse you back. That it really just, having relevant skills in your profile really just helps you to showcase your abilities to other LinkedIn members, your colleagues, and also as you get into your career to recruiters as well, if you're looking at moving roles, or getting a job, or getting another job. It just helps people understand your strengths. Another section on the profile, I don't have a screen grab from it, but a couple of other sections to think about are the recommendations section. So there you can recommend people if you've worked with someone and it's gone really well, or you've done a really good job for someone else. You can give and receive recommendations. So again, a little bit of kind of give and take there. If something goes particularly well, they can add some really nice kind of critical mass and strength to your profile. If people get to that section and see, several people have recommended you for in this case, it might be construction, legal advice, then that will add further strength and weight to your profile. So again, a good way of getting a recommendation is firstly asking someone that a particular project or piece of work has gone well, asking them for a recommendation, and also offering to give recommendations in return. And then the final quick one before we move on to using your profile is the projects and publications section. So again, if you can populate that with any projects that you've done, it might be a dissertation, it might be a publication in an academic journal, it might be anything, a news article or something that you've kind of worked on or written that fits into that project or publication section. Again, the more interesting things that you can include on your profile, from a university course or from anything else, the better. So that's the building your profile. Now you've got hopefully a relatively well populated, nice looking profile. So now, how do we use it? So the first thing, we talked about it already, connect again, keep connecting throughout your career. Essentially, that's how you build your network on LinkedIn. How do you go about that? We've started with, friends, colleagues, who do you know immediately, and connecting with them. That will naturally grow as you develop in your career, gain more experience, meet more people, work at different organizations. You will then have a bigger network, making sure that you meet someone, drop them a connection on LinkedIn. It might be connecting with people on this call, for example, or it might be, connecting with fellow colleagues at some work experience, or whatever it is. Keep connecting with people that you meet and interact, in a face-to-face way, but also in the virtual world. And one other way you can connect, you can obviously send a connection request to someone you haven't met. It's generally encouraged and LinkedIn advised that you connect with people that you do know or have some connection with, but you can connect with people cold. If you are going to do that, then I would recommend that there is some reason for you to want to connect with them. It may be that you've read an interesting article that they've put on LinkedIn, and they're in an area that is of interest or relevant to what you do, and then you might look to connect with them for that reason, because you're interested in what they said. You might have a question or something like that. So adding a note to a connection request, and LinkedIn will give you that prompt when you click on the connect with this person, is certainly a much stronger way of connecting with someone that you don't necessarily immediately know. But you can grow your network in that way through colder connections, but I'd always have a reason to connect and include a covering note there. Some other things you can do: join groups that you're interested in. That might be, making up an example here, but it might be a prospective lawyers group in whatever location you are, or that might be a broader group like the Harvard Business Review, for example. There's lots of different groups out there. Joining them can give you interesting content, but also helps kind of fill out your profile, give people an idea of what you're interested in, but also connect you to more people. In that regard as well, you can follow people. You can follow companies, again, interesting content, but it also, if you're following a whole load of sports companies, for example, I might think, oh, that person's interested in sport. I'm also interested in sport. So it can also help in that regard. Then further of kind of using your profile, Bram mentioned, I think, around kind of engagement with posts and engaging with content on LinkedIn. But liking, sharing, and commenting on other people's posts is firstly a good thing, because that gets you involved in the conversation that's going on online on LinkedIn. But it also does a couple of things for you. It then populates a section on your profile that shows your activity. So if you've gone and liked 10 different things, commented on 5 other things, then that will appear on that section on your profile. And that shows to other users that you're an active user, and that you're engaging with content, and that you have people to engage with. So it's a positive thing. It can also help you out. A little kind of trick: if you are posting something on LinkedIn after you've posted it, if you then go and engage with other people's content, liking, commenting 3 or more posts, then that shows to LinkedIn's algorithm that, again, you're an active user, and people will probably want to see what you've just posted. So the more you engage on the platform, the more your own content will be promoted by the LinkedIn algorithm as well. It's also a great way of kind of building your network, and engaging in a richer conversation on LinkedIn as well. So liking, sharing, commenting on other posts, and then posting your own content is a great way to kind of get into using the platform. In terms of other things to do with posting, LinkedIn uses hashtags. So hashtag use is also good on LinkedIn. Usually recommend sort of 2 to 5. Having a couple of general ones around, it might be the company you're working for or the general field, and then a few things more specific linked to the specific post. But you can use hashtags to help with getting your posts out there. And then just briefly on the kind of liking, sharing, commenting, and posting element as well. The more people that engage with your post, or a post that you're kind of interested in promoting, then again, the more interesting the LinkedIn algorithm will think it is. And this is assessed usually immediately in the first 24 hours about how much engagement a post gets, and that will determine how much it's promoted to users on that homepage feed that Bram talked about over the next 4 days or so. So early engagement with a post, if you've got something to say and you want as many people to see it as possible, then encouraging people to engage with that quickly is a great way of keeping that post around and making sure lots of people see it. And the final section is messaging. Briefly talked about that in the connecting section, but you can use the messaging tool to start conversations, but also grow your network through approaching people, be that it might be slightly cold, or it might be something you've seen at an event, to kind of encourage connections, but also start a commercial conversation or a bit of dialogue as well. So you can also use the messaging function with connections on LinkedIn. The final thing to say is, which Bram touched on as well, is that LinkedIn and all social media to a certain extent is an endurance race. You're not going to win by going on there, spending a full 12-hour day on it, doing loads of things, and then not doing anything for a whole month. Much better to chip away at it, 10 minutes each day, engage with some posts, maybe put something out there when you have something interesting to say, and then do the same each day, or three times a week or whatever. It very much is a kind of consistency based activity, and an endurance race, as I said, to kind of then slowly build your profile as you go. You can't win it by a quick sprint. Well, I think that is as much as I'm going to bore you with on the ins and outs of LinkedIn. I'll pass back over to Kat, who I think is going to take us forward.
Thank you so much, Nick. And also thank you to both of you. I personally found that really, really interesting. Really good to know about some of the theory behind personal brand, and then to follow that up nicely with some of the practical hints and tips from Nick was super. So thank you so much. It's not actually really about what I think, though. We're more interested to hear what you thought about that content. So I'd like to return to the online poll that we did right at the beginning, just to get your thoughts as to how you found that. So if you could just answer the question that should be appearing on screen now, in terms of how confident do you now feel, having attended this session, about developing your own personal brand? That would be great. So you've got a couple of options there, or you've got a few options to choose from. So if you can take some time to submit your response. And while you do that, we wanted to remind you of some of our upcoming events that we have coming up. So on screen shortly, you should be able to see the details of our upcoming virtual event series. We're running a number of sessions Wednesdays and Fridays around a great variety of topics. So there really is something for everyone there. Next Wednesday, just a couple of highlights. We've got the Cms Training Takeover. So you'll be hearing a little bit about what a day in the life looks like for them. And also you'll get a chance to ask them directly some of those burning questions that you might have about the role of a trainee. And that's complemented nicely by next Friday's session, so this time next week, where we will be joined by some of the recruitment team who are going to give us the inside scoop into the selection and assessment process. So the people presenting will be people who do spend hours and hours every year reviewing our applications. So I'm sure you'll be interested to hear a little bit more from them. Secondly, and not on screen, I just wanted to highlight that we've got a number of in-person events coming up, which you can review on the events tab of our Early Talent website. Those typically take the format of a kind of panel session and then drinks and networking in our offices. So next week, I'm personally off to Scotland, Glasgow, Edinburgh. We have events happening in our Aberdeen, Bristol and Sheffield offices as well. So just wanted to do a quick highlight of that. Before we reveal the results of the poll, just wanted to mention the CMS Portal that you've been invited to join as part of the registration process for this virtual event series. So this includes a whole host of useful hints and tips around the application process, and this will be available for you to access right up until the new year. So in terms of the results, so scores on the doors for you guys, Nick and Bram, really pleased to say that we have 37% of our audience are now feeling very confident, and we had no one selecting that option before, so that's great. We have 33% saying that they are quite confident, or very confident, sorry, and then 31% quite confident. So that's a huge kind of increase in terms of positivity around what people are feeling. So thank you so much for voting, guys, that's really useful. And thank you again to Nick and Bram. I think that the scores speak for themselves in that everyone did find that really, really interesting. So thanks also to Anita for answering some of the questions in the background, and also the Meet and Engage team for helping us stream today's session. Really hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of your Friday, and we hope to see you at future events. Bye.